Welcome back to Backwoods Horror Stories. This is a story that was submitted by a listener via email. It's definitely one of the most interesting I've ever heard. If you have a story to share, email Brian at paranormalworldproductions.com. You can also leave us a voicemail by clicking the button right here in the show notes. Now let's get into this amazing story of a Bigfoot buried on a family's farm.
Hey Wayne, first off, let me say I'm a big fan. I've watched you since your early Manimal days with the older guy and Walls. I'm glad to see that you've joined forces with Brian from Sasquatch Odyssey. I'm a big fan of him as well. I wish you continued success. The thing I've always liked about you most is your open-mindedness. You've always been respectful of others, giving them a safe and judgment-free place to share their experience. I'm somewhat of a public figure in a small town, so I'd like to remain anonymous. I'm a 34-year-old female from the state of Arkansas. The exact city, I don't really want to share. This happened to me when I was a little girl on my grandparents' farm. They had over 600 acres and they raised cattle. They sold to several suppliers in the South and they did quite well for themselves. You only realize that when you get older because when you're a kid, playing is all you really care about. So I always jumped at the chance for my brother, sister, and myself to go to Granny and Papa's house. Our parents would take us there for long weekend getaways every year on their anniversary, so that meant we got 3 days at Papa's farm, at least once every year. Now you'll have to forgive me, I'm a woman and I'm not that familiar with the different types of cows and/or bulls. You think I'd know more as much time as I spent over there, but here I am. I say this because Papa had this old bull that he absolutely loved. Why? I can't tell you. This old thing was mean as hell. I say old, but honestly I have no idea how old it was. I just remember he had it for several years up until this incident. Like I say, I don't know what kind it was, but I know that it was different from all the rest. He had other bulls, but none looked like this one. This one had huge horns that stuck out on each side, like those Texas Longhorns mascots kinda. This fellow was absolutely massive. He was so much bigger than all the others. Looking back now, it really was quite impressive. Papa always kept it separate from the other bulls. I don't know if it was to keep it from fighting the others or what, because I'm fairly confident if it wanted to, it could have killed anything on that old farm. Now, we never saw it, but sometimes when we would ask if he ever got lonely, Granny would tell us that sometimes Papa would let his girlfriend in to visit when he got lonely by himself. I have no idea if that was for breeding purposes, but now, as an adult, I assume that's what it was for. Anyway, one summer we got out to the farm for our yearly visit. This year was different, though. It felt completely different from the past years. Granny and Papa were just as cheerful as they'd always been, but Papa set us down as soon as we got there. He wouldn't let us go straight out to play like he'd always done before. This time he set us down with this look I'd never seen him have before. Now as an adult, I know that look well. It was concern and fear. He told us very sternly that under no circumstances were we to go into the woods during this visit. Not at all. Don't even get close to them. He said that if he and Granny saw any of us doing this, we'd be staying inside for the rest of the trip with a butt whooping. My Papa had never spoken to us like that before, so we knew better than to go near those woods. It kind of sucked because we always loved playing hide and seek in those woods, but we did as we were told. After he finished his talk, we were allowed to go out and play. But one thing was wrong, though. It didn't take us long to realize that that old bull wasn't there anymore. When we asked what happened to him, Papa just said he had passed away and he was buried on the backside of the property. I remember thinking to myself how big that hole must have been. Anyway, we go on about our business and we went home a few days later. The next year when we came back, everything was back to normal and we had free reign of the place once again. Fast forward to 2008, we lost our Papa. It was a difficult time, but he had a long, happy life with the woman that he loved, and he raised his family with love on that old farm. He was an amazing man, and I miss him dearly. The subject of what to do with the farm came up. My granny decided that she wanted to sell it, but only to someone in the family. It was all paid for, and she wasn't hurting for money, so she was going to sell it dirt cheap to anyone in the family that wanted it. My ex-husband and I were in the position at the time that we were wanting something different for our children, and I had such amazing memories from there, so we thought we'd take a shot at it. I told Granny that we were all in for it. This is where the story starts to get a bit odd. Granny told my husband and I that before we made that decision, she had to tell us what happened there. I was like, "What do you mean what happened?" Then she went on to blow our minds. First, let me say, I know that very few people are going to believe this. I wouldn't either if someone told me this. My granny went on to ask me if I remembered that summer that Papa told us not to go into the woods. I said, "Yes, ma'am, of course I do." And then she went on to tell me why. She told me that one morning, about a week before we were set to arrive, Papa went out on the porch drinking his coffee when he heard something from one of the pastures. He went out there to see what it was. She said that when he came back to the house, he was shaking and he had tears in his eyes. He was barely able to get it out, but he told her that he had just watched a wood booger chase down that old bull, put it in some kind of a headlock, and twist its neck. The bull just went limp and fell to the ground. The thing grabbed it by one of its horns and started dragging it into the woods. He said when the thing got to the barbed wire fence, it just picked up that old bull and tossed it over, then casually stepped over the fence and went back to dragging it away. My husband and I just sat there looking at each other. My granny was the sweetest and kindest woman in the world. Went to church every time the doors were open. She was not lying. My papa told her this. I asked her why we were able to go into the woods that next year. That's when she dropped another bomb on us. The week after we left, my papa put together an old-fashioned posse. About a dozen good old boys with rifles and shotguns all met at the farm and went after this thing. What my granny said next shocked me like nothing else, and I haven't been able to get these words out of my mind. She said that somewhere on that property there's an almost 10-foot Bigfoot buried. She said she has no idea why, and he would never tell her. He said that those men were the only ones that knew what happened that day, and that they would all take it to their graves. After hearing this, my husband and I decided that we didn't want the property anymore. We have kids of our own, and if there was something like this thing out there one time, who's to say there isn't more? My brother ended up with the property. He was told the same story I was, but the difference in he and I is he's into all that weird cryptid stuff. I am too now, obviously, but not to the point that I was going to go out looking. My brother does, though. I know he's actively searching the land for the burial spot. I don't know if he'll ever find it. I doubt he will. But I kind of hope he does. I know people are going to hear this story and cry bullshit. That is, if you ever decide to share it. The truth is, I don't care what people say. I knew my granny. I knew my papa. They were amazing, hard-working people. They did not make this up. Again, thanks so much for all you do, Wayne. I love the show. Keep up the good work.